Hello and welcome to 442. And yeah, okay, I get it. It's very different. I'm not he is not me, Adam's not here. But my name is Ryan, and 442 have tasked me with, at least for now, to try and take over the great work that Adam has done over the years. And I understand and appreciate this is going to be very, very different and very difficult perhaps for those that are big Adam fans and, you know, 442 fans alike. And he's done exceptional work, I have to say. The work that he's built on 442 over the last few years, you know, very, very commendable, and we wish him all the very, very best in what he does now. I am a football fan, much like the rest of us, and I'm not going to try and act like I'm not. I think Adam made a great, great thing of doing tactics, and I want to try and pick up from where he left off. And, you know, much like how this is a big change, I think change is different, change is now, and I feel like the Premier League has changed quite a lot this season. So when I say the Premier League has changed a lot this season, I feel like it's a big conversation as to where we are as a Premier League. In football in general, a lot of people feel like football's fallen off a little bit. A lot of people feel like football maybe, especially in the Premier League this season, isn't quite what it was. You know, a lot of the title race has already been decided pretty much, for example. I mean, Liverpool are so far in adrift from everybody else. And then the relegation battle, pretty much done. I mean, Southampton finishing possibly on record points of 9 points, which is insane. And all three of the newly promoted sides could be going straight back down for a second year running. And yeah, I get there's a big shift, but I feel like there is one aspect of the Premier League that people maybe haven't spoken about enough, and that is that race for Europe. The race for Europe is probably as good as it ever has been. Now, if you can probably hear the seagull in the background, you'll know now that I'm in Brighton, and I'm a bit of a Brighton fan, right? I might as well get it out of the way. Right, okay, I'm sorry if there's any Palace fans in the comments that are now going to unsubscribe from 442. I can only apologise. But if you're a Chelsea fan, you probably would have tried to buy that seagull. Let's talk about that Champions League race, because there are a lot of sides, much like Brighton, much like Bournemouth, Newcastle, Villa, sides that realistically haven't had a sniff of European football in the past. You know, Champions League down on the south coast would be absolutely immeasurable success. And weirdly enough, in this 442 magazine, I wrote a little something, and I said that I feel like we could finish 7th. And currently here we are, sat in 7th, and I feel like we could be better off. I can agree that expansive football, maybe the football that we've been seeing, particularly tactically over the last few years, has definitely shifted. I mean, even not just on a European standpoint, but I feel like from top to bottom in the Premier League, teams aren't really taking that pure football, that Pep Guardiola football that's inspired everybody into playing really as seriously as they used to. I mean, you see the likes of Nottingham Forest, for example, in that 3rd position, which they completely deserve, by the way, and absolute hats off credit to them for exactly how they've done it. But they've found a winning formula, and a formula that works so well. And that formula, realistically, is going back a little bit to the old days. You know, pacey wingers, very, very good attackers, someone like Chris Wood who could just bang goals in from anywhere inside that 18-yard box. And then, of course, you've got such a solid defence, counter-attacking football. And, okay, it might not be the most glamorous. As I said, they've got the lowest possession in the Premier League this season at only about 39%. But when you look at how they've done it, you can only say fair enough. And weirdly, you see the sides that maybe have tried to play expansive this season and the sides that try and bring football into the equation. It really has just backfired on them. I feel like you've got a big shift happening, and not just on the 442 YouTube channel where the old, no, I promise you he's not here, okay? I'm sorry, I'm not just going to bring out Adam. He's not behind there. He is gone, and that's why we are talking about change. But seriously, that whole shift maybe is happening. Maybe next season we see a little bit more dynamic, perhaps. Maybe you see a little bit more, you know, managerial input, perhaps. I feel like what we're definitely seeing, especially in that European race, is emphasis on a very, very good quality individual players. Chelsea spent £1 billion, right? They're now in the top 4, but realistically, I think if you ask other Chelsea fans, they'll say, no, I don't feel like we are playing the best football. You saw that game the other day against Arsenal, and realistically, you probably could have said they should have deserved maybe a little bit worse off than what they got. I don't think you see an Arsenal playing the best football, really. They're really relying on their set pieces to carry them through games. And don't get me wrong, it's a formula that works. It's using your best players to the best of their abilities. And yes, you say fair enough and credit to doing that. But I feel like that's where we're at in the Premier League. You've seen the likes of David Moyes coming back to Everton. maybe when you've got so many managers now that like to play that specific brand of football, that effective brand of football, that results-driven based brand of football, playing expansively isn't going to work against them. As you see, Brighton against Nottingham Forest, we go up there to the City ground and lose 7-0. 7-0, right? And that would be unheard of, probably, especially against not just the Brighton side, not just against the Forest side, but in general at that level of the season where Forest have just lost 5-0 to Bournemouth the week prior, to then go and win 7-0 in their next game. You start to think, okay, why is that happening? And when you see Brighton try and play exactly into the hands of Forest, who know that they can defend and doesn't matter how many times they have to do it because they're ready for it, that expansive football becomes completely irrelevant because you can't pass through that. So then when you look at a side like Bournemouth, like Brighton, like Newcastle, like Villa, when you look at Villa, you have to say well done to them. Hats off to Unai Emery. He's got it working there. And again, you give a lot of credit to those individuals again, but you'd probably then say Villa are doing it in the Champions League as well as the Premier League. That balance, that juggle has probably become one of the most notable things about these sides getting into that next stage of the Premier League, you know, where you get that leap from being a mid-table side to balancing 3 games a week. It becomes emphasised. I remember so many managers going through that. Jurgen Klopp would always talk about the amount of games that players would have to play. You're now seeing that shift start to happen a little bit better off, I think, for sides like Villa, for sides like Brighton, for sides like Newcastle. And now, obviously, Newcastle with Carabao Cup winners, the first trophy for them in 70 years. You know, these sides now are stronger and better than they ever have been, particularly when it comes to squad depth. And that squad depth really has to be echoed across the rest of the Premier League where, you know, when you get towards the bottom end of that Premier League, the gulf is just too big. You know, and financially, those clubs can't compete with the likes of Brighton now, who are one of the top spenders in the Premier League this season. Amongst those teams in that top probably 4 down to about 8th, all of those sides have spent around 100 million or more. In Brighton's case, it's closer to 200 million. In Chelsea's case, it's closer to 1 billion, as we've said in the past. You know, these sides are very, very wealthy sides now that can just break the barrier. And you're seeing a big shift in that top 6. 4th, Chelsea, 49 points. 5th, City, 48 points. 6th, Newcastle, 47 points. 7th, Brighton, 47 points. 8th, Fulham at 45. And Villa, 45. Bournemouth, 44. That goes all the way down to 10th place, where potentially any of those sides could effectively be in a European position by the end of this season. But why is this? Why have we now got the likes of Spurs, the likes of Manchester United, unable to compete at this sort of level? You see Spurs losing to Fulham at the weekend. You see United over the course of the season being very, very poor and nowhere near the levels. And realistically, it comes down to everything off the pitch and being able to invest this money not only well, but wisely, shrewdly, and being able to recruit from not just one place, not just one area. You know, you're now looking at recruitment across the rest of the world. I feel like a lot of teams in the last 3, 4, 5 years are now trying to do process. And by process, that means actually doing process. That doesn't just mean sacking a manager after 6 months or after 3 months because you're not getting the results. And I feel like for sides that have that ability to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more trusting within their process, are becoming superpowers, really, in the grand scheme of things. And now you see Villa in the latter end of the FA Cup and of the Champions League. It's anyone's. It really is anyone's to start winning serious silverware, serious trophies for clubs that realistically 5 or 6 years ago were completely irrelevant. And it fills me with complete joy, personally, because I'm someone that's not been a supporter of a big club, right? I've not had the joy of watching my team win a trophy or 2 or 3 every single year. And I feel like, especially for clubs that have had to go through that whole process, the whole restructuring of their football club from top to bottom, and now starting to see the rewards for it, I feel like that's a sign that football is going the right way and is definitely not dead, to address any of the critics maybe out there that want to see the big clubs at the top. At the same time, though, of course, you want to see a lot more of an open title race, for example. You don't want to see the sides at the bottom going straight back down again. And of course, that shift has to be monitored all the same as everything else. I'm looking back on this season preview from way back when, the beginning of the season. I think this was actually just before the season started. And a Bournemouth fan here, shout out to Sam Davis, who said that they'd finish 11th this season. I mean, I think you're just seeing this big shift. An 11,000 seater stadium that's becoming iconic, right? And again, this is perfect for me. This is basically backing up the point I've always wanted to say. You're seeing a big shift in such small clubs now, and it's brilliant. I mean, when you look back on the fans' point of views, you're now seeing a shift in expectation, a shift in mentality. Realistically, you now want to aim higher. Okay, do you know what? I feel like for my first 442 video, because I've gone over everyone that's going for this Champions League position, I simply have to do a prediction, because we've talked about the season preview on 442. We might as well do the sort of not mid-season, the just after mid-season, coming into the business end. That's the buzzword that everyone loves, the business end of the season. As you get to April, May, you're going to hear it all the time. So the business end of the season predictions. Who do we actually think is going to get into that glorious Champions League spot, which could be, as I said, absolutely anyone's? And tell us in the comments as well, because I'm really, really keen to hear what everyone thinks. I think you'll get Newcastle 4th. No, I don't. I feel like you're going to get, I have to, because I feel like City just have too much of a good team to write them off. I feel like City will get 4th. I think Newcastle will get 5th. I think Brighton will get 6th. I think Chelsea will get 7th. And I think the rest could stay similar. And that's only on the basis for Villa fans that are watching me here, right? I like your team, right? I come in peace, I promise. But I think genuinely Villa's priority being on the Champions League and the run-in that they've got towards the end of the season, I would quite like to see them do well in the Champions League, which is why I feel like they could maybe discount that run in the Premier League. So I'm going to probably discount Villa in that sense, on that basis, and I apologise if that's slightly wrong to Villa fans. If you do feel like that's different, please correct me in the comments. I'm only a fan as well, come in peace. But I do think that you're going to see Newcastle and Brighton competing for that Champions League position, and that is from a very unbiased standpoint. Chelsea have the potential to fall apart, I think, a little bit, and that's coming from someone that probably wants them to, but again, I come in peace, impartially. And Manchester City, I feel like, will be too good to truly write them off. So that's my predictions. Of course, leave yours in the comments below. I'm very keen to hear because I feel like there's no true wrong answer at the moment. I don't feel like you could put those teams in one position and be completely right. And if you are, then fair play. I'll get you a coffee if you ever come to Brighton. Anyway, that is all for me. I hope you've all enjoyed a very different styled video, although we're looking back on some 442 piece. We're talking a little bit about Adam again. I do truly wish him all the very best with his career, so make sure you go and give him a follow. My name has been Ryan, and I hope to see you again very, very soon here on 442. And of course, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you very, very soon for the next one. And goodbye.